Hello, and you're very welcome to Adapt Radio. My name is Dr. Claire O'Connell, and today we're talking about AI literacy in older people.
From the Adapt Centre at Trinity College, this is Adapt Radio, presenting groundbreaking innovations, one conversation at a time.
AI literacy is really the difference between shaping the future and being shaped by it. So if we want all of these services and products to be fair, ethical and beneficial for all, it's very important that everybody is included in this transformation, particularly older adults.
Now, AI is here. It's changing many aspects of our lives, but how can we make sure that everyone knows how to live well in a world that can often be shaped by AI? Joining us on the podcast today are two experts who do a huge amount of work on building AI literacy in older people. Paula Kelly is a lecturer and member of the Teapot Research Group in the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering at TU Dublin. And Michael Corr is an electrical and electronic engineer and a lecturer also at the School of Electronic and Engineering in TU Dublin. Paula and Mick, you are very welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
You're both involved in a project called Age-Friendly AI, Ireland's National Artificial Intelligence Literacy Initiative. So can you explain to me what is AI literacy and why is it important that older people develop it?
Okay, Claire, I'll take that one. I suppose developing AI literacy is really about keeping up with technology, but not alone that. It is now becoming increasingly really a matter of personal autonomy and keeping safe online and about social inclusion. So what we've seen and heard around the country is that AI has become embedded in essential services that older people and indeed the general public use in their everyday lives. And it's not often so obvious that it's embedded in these. So at the start of each of our presentations, we do a show of hands to see how many people have used AI that day so far. And typically in a room of, say, 40 participants, about 3 or 4 hands would go up. And then we give everyday examples of, I ask, perhaps have you used Google Maps to get to the location, or have you made a payment with a card, or have you watched Netflix, or all of these services and products that a lot of us use now and take for granted. And then, so I give an example of about 10 or so of those. And then I ask for a show of hands subsequently to say, how many people have used AI today? And invariably 38, 39 of the 40 hands will go up. And I always lead in on the presentation by saying, that's exactly the essence of our project. We want to give confidence to older adults to talk about AI, to see where they're already using it, even if they're not aware of it, to have a conversation and be a critical analysis of how it's being used, what data is being collected, is it fair and accessible, is it equitable, is it well explained? So our literacy training programme is an effort to give voice to older adults around this topic.
Fantastic. And I mean, as you say, AI is baked into so much of what we do now. We don't even realise it. And even that, do you find that's kind of a big eye-opener for people, that awareness that actually they might think of AI as a very particular thing like a ChatGPT or something like that, but actually they need to be aware that it is everywhere. Is that something that is a big aha moment when you work with older people?
It definitely is. So I think I cease to be amazed myself. We've run up to 8 regional workshops around the country over the last year, having these in-depth discussions with older adults. And every time I think the prop isn't going to work anymore. And I'm always amazed that it's still working, despite the fact, as I say, that almost every day of the day of the workshops, there's been some mention or other about AI in Morning Ireland, for example, which would presumably get most of the listenership of the participants that are there with us. So I think that's an eye-opener for all of us, for policymakers, for government agencies, for broadcasters, for academics, for industry. How is it that we're talking about these technologies? They're already embedded in our everyday products and services, and yet people are unaware that they're using AI when they engage with these products and services.
Absolutely. And I think that probably applies to most of the population. But In particular, can you tell us about age-friendly AI? So this is Ireland's National Artificial Intelligence Literacy Initiative. Maybe, Michael, can you tell me a little bit about how it came about and how you got involved with it?
Yeah, sure. Actually, obviously, the lead people on this is Paula and her team and Emma, and they've done amazing work on this, I have to say. And my involvement originally, it's really just as a volunteer to help out, because you can imagine these events, they're pretty hard to organise. They need to be manned, facilitated and all that sort of stuff. So you could have 30, 40, 50 people in a room. So 10 tables or 5 or whatever, and you need people to facilitate that, to engage with the people that are there, etc. So I think that was the original role that I would have. And I could see the objective really there is just to facilitate a discussion around some topic with AI and just capture people's feelings about everything. And that's essentially what the team has been doing. Just to say a couple of words, I suppose. When I started to do it originally on behalf of Paula and that, Paula volunteered me. Paula has a strange way of getting people to do things for her. So we were volunteered into the role, and I was a little bit self-confident going in. I'm thinking, like, I'm a lecturer, I know everything about AI, and sure, I'm going to be teaching these people and all the rest of it and telling them whatever. It couldn't be further from the truth, because I'm exactly in the right age demographic. I'm 67. I'm straight in the middle of the people I was dealing with. That's the first thing. And it became apparent pretty soon that my knowledge of AI was the same as theirs. It was very limited to what was sort of obvious, and the scales has been taken away from all of our eyes as we went through the process. I was a facilitator, but at the same time I was learning as much as the participants. And I'd like to say a few words maybe about the type of person that was there, if that's okay. The self-confidence that I had coming to the table was rattled pretty early on, because when you engage with these people, they don't take any prisoners. They're very knowledgeable about life. They have a lot of life experience. Like, for example, we asked them to sign a participant consent form, because obviously the information we're gathering, we'd like to use it in the research. It's totally handled confidentially. We want to give them reassurance around it. And they pushed back on that immediately. Now, they did sign and all the rest of it, but, they don't take any of this stuff for granted. That was the first thing. And they were very knowledgeable about AI, especially how it impacted on themselves. So they were aware of that. They were very open for new information. They're open to be trained up, per se, or given information so that they can use it better. And I think very willing to contribute to the discussion. But another note I just put down before I came here, their main consideration is for the older people or the younger people coming after them. They focus on their own particular needs, but I think one of the biggest messages from these talks or engagements is that they're concerned about the new generation coming after them and how AI is going to affect them. So that was my journey with the events. I find they were very interesting, very engaging, and people were fantastic at them, I have to say.
Brilliant. And how many events have you run? And also tell me about, where do you find the people to come to the events? Do they volunteer themselves, or do you put out flyers? Who goes to it, and how many? Give me a picture of that.
So we're part of the Discuss AI program. So we're using their workflow to conduct the participant workshops. And so typically what we did in 2025, which is part of our dialogue phase, is that we organised 4 regional co-creation workshops. So this is where we went out and we did a presentation with 30 or so participants at each event, and we advertised those through our local networks. So community partners, we've over 20 partners involved in the project now, and through broadcasting on local radio and local media outlets, and through advertising in local libraries. So we have a very strong partnership with Libraries Ireland, and we've leveraged that to advertise our events. To be fair, most of them have been oversubscribed.
Great.
And lovely thing about this demographic is once they sign up to an event, they really do show up. So I think that's not always typical of events, that you often have some people who don't show up on the day, but we haven't found that to be the case. So we've been really encouraged by that level of engagement. So then at the events, in the co-creation events, we had a general discussion after an initial presentation about where AI is already embedded in products and services. And then we broke out into smaller groups, as Mick already alluded to, typically about 5 participants at a seat, with the facilitator from our team and a scribe to take the notes. And then we gathered the hopes, concerns and ideas that the participants had in their general discussion. And the scribe summarises this, and then the facilitator or the scribe feed it back to the general room for a bigger group discussion on the key insights that had come up. And there's some cross conversations then amongst the groups, and we take away all that information and are in the process of analysing it now. And then after those 4 co-creation workshops in the second half of 2025, we went out, developed out a set of scenarios or stories that really highlighted the main key concerns that older adults have around AI. And I can go into those, if you like, in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. And we went back out at another 4 regional citizen thinking workshops. So this was a deeper discussion into the key topics of concern and expectation around how AI could be used better in their lives for the second half of 2025. And at these, again, a very similar format of group discussions feeding back into the larger room. And now, based on all of the information and the data we've gathered around that, we're in the middle of co-developing out our literacy training programme that we're going to roll out in 2026 across the libraries network in Ireland to carry out these AI literacy workshops.
Amazing. So you have this kind of these 3 legs of the stool, as it were. So the first one is you're working with older people, doing a workshop, facilitating around how you're sort of getting an idea of their hopes, their concerns, their awareness. And then you're doing kind of taking that information and bringing it to a think-in group, kind of to try and come up with ways to help people develop literacy. And then the third one is you're actually delivering the literacy training that has been shaped by all these conversations. I love it. So
can I add in one little thing, Claire, there I forgot to mention, that just in order to ensure the sustainability of what we're doing, we're also engaging with civil society and community partners that we have to develop out information sessions for them.
Oh, yeah.
So that the expectation might be that if they're confident enough to do it, and we are writing guides at the moment for them, that they then will be able to take this literacy training content and run with it past the end of the project.
Brilliant.
So what we really don't want is that all of the efforts that all of our participants have put in and our community partners and indeed ourselves won't be just shelved at the end of this. And we're really encouraged by the partnerships that we've developed, as I say, with Libraries Ireland, but also with Age Action and Age Friendly Ireland and several other partners, that they will help to ensure the longevity of this content.
Amazing. And that's really important as well. You don't just want the activity to stop when the project stops. Can we go back to those workshops that Mick was talking about earlier, where, you know, you have these kind of groups of people talking about their hopes, their concerns in this facilitated discussion. What kind of findings came out of that? When you took the pulse of older people in AI, what did you find?
Well, I mentioned that we had our workshops and we had over 300 people engaged in those, but we also engaged over 6,000 in total because we attended several other public events that we've been invited to over the years, including Senior Times 50 plus shows, the PPNs, various other public events that we've had the opportunity to have a stand at. And so we've really heard from a lot of people, and we've also had an online free postcard campaign through the libraries again, and also on our online website, agefriendlyai.ie, to gather these hopes, concerns and ideas. So we have key themes coming out of it. And what we've heard are that older adults do see significant benefits and opportunities with AI. And in particular, they're very interested in technologies that support independent living, so living at home longer. So things like smart reminders and home safety systems, fall alerts and etc. At an event we had in Thurles, we had a real lived experience of an older adult that she very generously shared with the whole room in part of this feedback group discussion. And she mentioned that she was facilitated to be at our event due to the fact that she had kitted out her home with smart technologies that allowed her to be able to keep in contact with her husband, who had early stages dementia. And he would be very nervous when she leaves the house. But because she could keep a monitor on where he was within the house and knew he had, you know, was up and hadn't fallen and had moved into the living room after his breakfast. And she also knew if the doorbell rang that she would be able to intervene and so on. So all of this tech that enabled her to do that. And so that was a very impactful. It stayed with me. But Equally, and I was quite surprised with this in that I thought it was very insightful. My table that I was at were immediately started the discussion subsequently and stayed on after the event to discuss out what were the implications of that. And I suppose this is the piece we're trying to bring in, this critical evaluation of what this means. And so obviously for her, it was really important. But on the other hand, some people felt that maybe it was an intrusion of her husband's privacy, and that's a big philosophical discussion. But also a big concern was where the data was going to go. So who owned the data that was being collected? How could you be sure that it would be secure, that it wouldn't be sold on to a third party, that it wouldn't be used for any other purposes, unintended purposes, etc.? So that brings me to that concern that people expressed about privacy and security, although they saw the technologies that support independent living. And then before I go off topic, other potentials that we're seeing were typically in healthcare. So living at home is very important to older people. Healthcare is important to older people. So they saw, the benefits of AI in terms of allowing for faster diagnosis in the health sector. Even a lot of people reported on having wearables like smart watches that were keeping them in touch with how well their heart was doing and alerting them if things went wrong. Again, another discussion arose then around, does that actually make you more nervous? And somebody mentioned that their GP was inundated with people coming in with stats from their wearables that, had needed to be verified by a human. So I think that also came across that whilst there were benefits there, people saw the need for a human in the loop. And then older adults liked AI and tools that facilitated social connection. So lots of people mentioned, keeping in touch with their family, and also translation aids and voice assistants. Lots of people used voice assistants, and all of those helped in, reducing isolation and so on. But the big concerns that came out were privacy and security. So as I mentioned, data misuse and scams were a big thing actually as well. Both text scams and people purporting to be ringing from their banks or other services. And I think, it seems that older people, is shocking almost, are targeted by these criminals, basically. So older people are really nervous about phone calls and text messages. And what we are trying to do now as part of our AI literacy development is to put together a set of resources and get in touch with Citizens Information Bureau and other such organisations to see how we can combine resources to help older people. And we have a partnership with Media Literacy Ireland, and so we use their Stop, Check, Scam as one of, a mechanism that we alert older adults to really take account of. And I suppose just on the social side, there is the social connection that all this AI technology and technology in general allows, but it can also cause loss of human context, particularly in the provision of services that older people are used to using. So instead of being able to go into the bank and talk to your friendly bank manager or whatever, now it's you talk to a chatbot initially. And only if you get past that do you get actually on to talking to somebody. And finally, complexity and usability. So we're calling out to our technology partners to think about everybody when we're developing and designing interfaces. So I had a nice story of a lady in Limerick came up to me and with her husband, and she said she used to do all the booking of their holidays and all their online transactions, but she developed a shake in her hand, and she no longer felt confident that she'd clicked the right button if she was doing that. And she wasn't, she was in her late 60s. It was, part of aging for her. And we don't often think about, the likes of that, or somebody after a fall mightn't be able to use, if they were unfortunate enough to break a hand or whatever, might not be able to use the devices anymore. And does that mean that they're, as we say, it's a digital first and not digital only? Does not digital first mean that they're going to spend hours online trying to actually talk to somebody on a phone, trying to get actually to speak to a human in the loop? So they're the main concerns.
And Mick, you would have been in the room as well, hearing people talk about this. Were there examples that stood out for you among these hopes, concerns and feelings about AI?
Well, absolutely. There are quite a few things that would come up, all right. I started mentioning one or two of them in a a brief talk I did on behalf of Paula a few weeks ago. We were talking to one of the groups, and I think it was in Woodkey, and I sort of decided to focus what I was saying on the volunteers. So the volunteers are fantastic. They're lovely. Well, there's a cadre of older people like myself and my wife and some other academics. But then you have a cadre of younger researchers who are really engaged. They really want to help people out. They're very, very enthusiastic. They're so respectful of the people that are at these events, which is great. And one of the points I was making to them was I was trying to emphasize that they needed to put themselves in the shoes of the people that were at these events to really understand them. And this is one of the examples that came back to me was that a gentleman of one of the events, he said it's very, very simple. He said, these younger people are developing these technologies. They need to live in my shoes. And he gave a really simple example. He said, I'm afraid of my bank app because I have more money to lose than a young person has. A very simple thing. So maybe the young person isn't quite looking at all of the issues that face them, that particular individual, you know. But that was one thing. But I suppose what I could say is that rather than giving you some examples of what they come up with, definitely what we came away from and what I tried to emphasize to the volunteers, because Paul and her team are going to have to develop this stuff. And it was that if you're in their shoes, you'd understand that they're very knowledgeable, that they've great life experience that the younger people haven't had yet. And they're very enthusiastic and energetic. Like one of the examples I gave to them in the room was I said, everybody in this room of my age we still think we're 21. We're looking out here and we still think we're 21, you know. So they're open to change. They're totally open to being helped along this road, you know. And I have to say, another thing I mentioned to somebody, like I'm still lecturing away, and if the students I had were even a quarter as engaged and enthusiastic as the people that were at these events, I'd be so happy, you know. I don't have too many anecdotes in terms of what they asked for, but I do know they're open to change, and they have an expectation now that Paula and her team actually deliver for them. So
yeah, that's a mindset.
No pressure, Paula.
No pressure, exactly.
So on a very positive side from AI, one of our facilitators, Marie McSweeney, I'll give a shout out to her. She joined because she brought her dad along to one of our events in Kerry, and she loved it so much that she got in contact subsequently and asked could she be involved. And she works for a fintech company down there, and they subsequently gave her a half a day a month to help us out on the project.
Oh, wow.
So she's doing social impact analysis for us, which is amazing due to her background. But she got in contact the other day when I gave the shout out to see what memorable anecdotes we might have from the dialogue phase. And she mentioned a lady in Limerick who was so enthusiastic about some of the tech that her grandkids had shown her that when they gathered around at a family event, she had a number of them of varying ages, and they all got engaged together using AI to write and record a song for the family. And then they performed it all together, and she said she absolutely basked in the enjoyment they got out of that piece, where they normally would be all sitting together on their phones individually and maybe not engaging. So I thought that was a really
amazing.
nice story.
What a lovely thing to have into the future as well. Have that little memory of that time. Yeah, fantastic.
And then similar to Mick's story there, another colleague mentioned that a participant in Thurles, he said he has recognised that he probably had lower digital skills than younger fintech users. But again, his life savings was in the bank, and he had, it would be so difficult for him to retrieve it were he ever to lose it. He wouldn't have a second chance, or didn't feel he'd have a second chance. And on a similar note, there was a lady at the same table who then went on to share that she had two bank accounts. One was non-digital and she had all her money in it. And then she used another one. She was, had to use her online banking. And what she did was just transfer money in small amounts into it.
Yeah.
So it's a huge concern there around money and savings and fraudulent activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on a level of going online on the bank, it's a little bit tangential because it's more digital services, but I mean, it's going towards being AI powered or AI driven. A huge issue for many older people is this level of two-level authentication. So again, this is a call out to our tech companies to say, really, is two-level authentication suitable for this cohort? I mean, you're asking people to have a second device beside them to be able to swipe. Oh, my own mother's fingertips don't really work, so swiping really isn't very easy for her. Is there not a better way? Is there not some other way that we can facilitate older adults if we want to move to a digital platform? And the government has plans for that with the digital plan that they're trying to implement for 2030, where all essential government services are going 100% online, and they're hoping to have a 90% uptake. And really, if that's the case, we need the voice of these older adults to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely,
and their needs in those services.
Right, to make things usable, to make them accessible, to make it all inclusive. In terms of the training, I suppose, that's going to arise out of this, how is that taking shape and how will that be delivered?
Yeah, so at the moment we're developing the content of our modules, and what we've worked with Libraries Ireland to align our training under their Skills for Life programme. Mm-hmm. So there are 4 pillars under the Skills for Life programme where we've suggested modules that will fit nicely under that. And what we don't want to do is overburden librarians in that regard at all, or even assume that they'll be able to deliver out the modules. But we're aligning it as closely as we can so that if there is capacity to incorporate these into their delivery, then we'd be delighted with that. But we will have information sessions for them and for any other community group leaders or members of civil society that feel that they'd like to use our information literacy training material or AI literacy training material. We'll have these information sessions for them to work with that. So we're developing that at the moment, and we're going out on our first event in the middle of February. So we actually have been inundated with requests.
Good.
So we've 5 or 6 libraries already lined up, and we haven't even advertised yet, and we haven't given the material fully ready yet. But there is a team of 4 of us working very well in the background on that. And we're really using what we've heard on the ground to come up with the content for this material. We're also hoping to bring out a number of demonstrations that will help convey the concepts that we're trying to get across in a very tangible way. So people will be able to interact with our props. And we have a number of those. We brought some of them on our 2025 dialogue phase. So people can stand around and experience, for instance, generative AI, or we have a talking mask for text to voice and voice to text, and a number of other, and radio interface that is quite attractive to older people because it has a nice nostalgic look and feel to it. And then we use it as a prop to talk about AI generated versus human curated media content and what the implications are for how realistic it is and perhaps, impressive. But then also what are the long-term implications on the creative world with AI content being generated from existing resources and not really creative at all. But anyway, a longer discussion around the ethics around that. So we have a number of these props. Some of them, it will be feasible for people to use them. Some of them are off-the-shelf products like an Alexa and a smart plug, or a voice assistant and a smart plug. And some of them are our own in-house developed materials. So some of them will be relatively straightforward to showcase subsequently when the project is finished, and some maybe not so, but we use them nevertheless as part of the training initially just to keep people interested.
Very good, very good. And I suppose there would be a cohort of people, I suppose across any ages, but maybe particularly among older people, who just kind of go, AI, that's not for me. I mean, and they just wouldn't engage. What would you say to those people about how would you encourage them to come into the library and engage with this training?
Age Action have statistics showing that 62% of adults in Ireland over 65 lack basic digital skills, and nearly 1/3 don't use the internet at all. So that's that cohort that you're talking about there, Claire. And this is very problematic because the government has a number of strategies. So it had the Digital for Good inclusion strategy in 2023, the Irish part of the 2023 study again for Programme for International Assessment all shows that there's a huge level of unmet literacy. And we've a partnership with NALA, and at their conferences that we've attended, exactly the same issues come up. So 1 in 5, NALA tell us, struggle with basic written and mathematical skills. So, it's a very hard cohort to really engage in AI on top of that. So with the rapid advancements of AI, this really becomes a huge issue. And the Joint Oireachtas Committee on AI just published a report in December 2025, and it's really calling for a coordinated national effort to try to invest in AI education and literacy skills in this area for everyone. And so I suppose that's what this initiative, it's a step in that direction, but we only have a certain level of resources for the project. So we are calling for what we're doing to be embedded in the AI strategies of the government going forward. So in order to reach that cohort, like, it will require a really coordinated effort with more investment.
So I suppose it sounds like that you've been well subscribed in these stages to date. How can people continue to get involved and build on the momentum now of what you've been doing with AI literacy in older people?
Yeah, so I suppose we see an urgent need for upskilling and securing the sustainability of this project. And so there are a number of call to actions that we have with a number of different groups of people. So first of all, for older adults who haven't been involved and would like to, check out our website. So that's agefriendlyai.ie. We have a number of events coming up. Please share your ideas, your hopes, your concerns on AI. You can do that via our online portal or free postcard campaign that you should find in your local library. And look out for any opportunities that we showcase on the website to participate in our training that will be coming to your local library or local community group very soon. And you can also sign up to our newsletter. So we have an age-friendly AI newsletter every month. Then to librarians and community group leaders, thanks so much for all your help so far in getting the word out there. And if you haven't, please consider how our upcoming resources could be used within your networks and how you could use them to enhance your AI literacy among your members or your service users. And considering signing up for 4 of our upcoming information sessions, where we will step you through our co-created critical AI literacy training material. And we'll have 3 of those online and 1 in person. So we'll get details out about that as soon as we have them, and certainly within the coming weeks. To industry, we say, get behind us, give us some sponsorship, host some events. Please listen to what older adults have told us. What are their concerns? How could these products and services be more streamlined for them? How could they be more equitable, accessible and transparent? Please, can we have guardrails around how they're being used? And respect all of your users, especially older users who have a huge wealth of lived experience to add to the process of your technological developments. And finally, to the government, we're saying leverage this evidence-based, inclusive and community-embedded initiative to shape national AI literacy and dialogue efforts. And Ireland is assuming the presidency of the Council of the EU in July this year, so it's a huge opportunity for the government to have a ready-made success story of projects that have been funded by the government through Research Ireland, of inclusive measures taken to upscale and reskill the public for the AI age, particularly this vulnerable demographic that we represent. And we really can use it on the global stage to show Ireland as a leader in the debate on ethical and accessible AI. So I'd just like to finish by saying that AI literacy is really the difference between shaping the future and being shaped by it. So if we want all of these services and products to be fair, ethical and beneficial for all, it's very important that everybody is included in this transformation, particularly older adults. We're co-developing the literacy training so that it is with and for older adults. We're trying to foster curiosity through it, confidence and the ability to critically engage with AI technology. And we really want to ensure that everybody can navigate and benefit from AI rather than feeling excluded or left behind by it.
Great. Well, thank you, Paula Kelly and Michael Corr, for joining us today. And if you would like to find out more about AI literacy and older people, you can find lots of information in the show notes and at www.adaptcentre.ie. That's it for our podcast this time around. Until next time, from myself, Claire O'Connell, Slán, and thanks for listening.
The Adapt Radio podcast is brought to you by the Adapt Centre at Trinity College Dublin. Find out more about their extensive research work at adaptcentre.ie. Join us next time to hear about more groundbreaking innovations. To get new episodes automatically, just click the follow button on your player right now. The Adapt Radio podcast is produced by dustpod.io with episodes monthly on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.